for his response to this question, we turn to Mr. Tim Graney.
I don't view America as having an empire. Our military is the greatest. Our military is the greatest this world has ever seen. We have never used it to take from others. We have only used it in the defense of our freedom and the freedom of others. And they should be applauded and saluted for that. Let's go on to the budget.
Let's let the gentleman answer, please. Thank you.
Let's go on to the budget. You know, last time we had a surplus was back in 2000. I say we go back, we look at that budget in 2000 and say, how do we get back to that? Those of us in the private sector, whether you're making $100 in profit or $1 billion in profit, department heads come in and say, cut the budget, cut 5%, cut 10%. You figure out how to do more with less. It's happening in private America. We can do it in the public sector as well. It needs some fortitude in Washington to work with others to say, this is what we need to do to cut our budget. We can do it, but we have to work together to do it. It's the only way we're going to start to pay down this debt. And the only way we're going to pay down the debt is by bringing more money to the government. We sure hate to see that. And the only way you're going to bring more revenue into the government is by growing GDP, which means we need more jobs here in America. And we need reduced regulation and taxation in our businesses, so we are the best and most competitive place to do business in the world. If we're going to pay down this debt, which is a serious threat to our nation, pretty soon the interest on our debt is going to outspend Social Security, Medicare, and National Defense. And so we need to start paying it down now by growing the GDP and getting jobs here in America. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grady. All right, now we turn to your answer on this question, Mr. Gerald Wall.
Well, let me first remind the congressman, I wonder how long them printing presses ran to print $400 million last year. And let me say one more thing you'll never see out of me. I'll never vote to defund our brave men and women while they're on the battlefield. Deficit spending should stop. The best way we do that is a constitutional amendment. And again, I will remind my opponents right here that you can say anything is unconstitutional, but a constitutional amendment attaches to the original document, and it too becomes the law of the land. A constitutional amendment will solve our problem with deficit spending, because we already see we can't count on our politicians to stop doing it. It's like a drug. You get addicted to it, you pass out favors and buy votes, and it's the only way to stop it is force them to stop it by passing a constitutional amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wall. All right, our next question. I'll read it, don't worry. Talking about health care. Certain proposals to drastically reform health insurance and establish a government-run health care system in this country were met with vigorous opposition around the country and in this congressional district. Many watched their televisions and nodded along as they saw their fellow citizens standing up, various town hall meetings, expressing their concerns to their elected officials. But what will you do as a member of Congress to address health insurance reform? And what will you do to ensure that your constituents are adequately informed and consulted on this issue? We go to Dr. Paul.
Well, one thing is we don't need more government in medicine. Our problems have all come from big government it being involved, and it's been there since the 1970s, and we've had managed care. It's managed care along with the inflation that has pushed the costs up. The medical care is reasonably good, but the main problem that the people have is they can't afford it, and they can't afford it because government's been involved. I've introduced a fair number of legislation that would return us to a more market delivery of medical care. There is no reason why services can't be delivered in the marketplace just like other goods and services. And unfortunately, we make an exemption for medical care, and we think the government has a right to do this, and people claim they have a right to medical care. You have a right to your life, and you have your right to liberty, but you don't have a right to a job, or you don't have a right to your house, and you don't have a right to medical care. But what we need to do is we need to change the tax code to make sure that individuals and small companies get the tax deduction just like big companies. We need to change the tort law. We need to legalize the sale of insurance across state lines. And there's quite a few things that we could do. Without dismantling what we have today. But eventually, though, it's going to be dismantled because the way we're going right now is more government involvement, and that means rationing. They are talking about rationing. If that Obamacare ever got passed, believe me, there would be rationing, and the services would just crumble, so we have to stop Obamacare, and I've worked real hard on trying to prevent that thing from passing.
All right, for the response, we're going to Mr. Tim Graney.
I guess part of that question was dealing with hearing from your constituents. I guess we could start by actually holding a town hall on the healthcare issue, which our current congressman failed to do, especially here in Katy. And I know a lot of people called the office looking for it. What is insurance? Insurance is about insuring financial risk. Those of us that have our home and auto insurance, it's not provided by our employer. We go out and buy it on the free market. We buy insurance to insure against calamity. We don't use our insurance for getting our oil changed or a new set of tires or when the AC goes out in our house. We need to refocus what insurance means and why do we have it. I think we need to have more skin in the game when we go to the doctor and they say, Mr. Graney, we need to run a couple tests. Well, time out, doc. Let's talk about those tests. Are they both essential? Do we need them both? What do they cost? Where can I get them? You know, as we went to HMOs many years ago, it cost you $5, $10, $20 to go to the doctor, so everyone ran off and went to the doctor. We need to have more financial stake in the game when we go into the doctor. I practice what I preach. I personally have a high deductible health savings account type plan, so my premium's a lot lower for myself and my family. But when I go to the doctor, I ask those questions. We also need to decouple it from our employer. As these premiums come down, we can do that. That opens up a free market enterprise. How many people do you know are stuck in their jobs because of their health benefits of their employer? Why should our home and auto insurance, why can't it be like that? So when you leave your job, you take your insurance with you. That's what we need to do. We need tort reform and immigration reform before we do health care reform as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Graney. And for the next response, we go to Mr. Gerald Wall.
Health insurance has been a big deal. Let me just categorically state, I would be opposed to either Democratic bill in the House or the Senate, and I too would vote against either one. We don't need any more government-run anything. We need to keep it private. In private industry, there's a few things we can do. For one, we should not block pre-existing conditions. We should make sure that insurance companies cover pre-existing conditions. There's no sense you being on your job 15, 20 years, you lose your job and have to go get another job, and because you have a pre-existing condition like diabetes, you can't get insurance and be covered by that. That needs to stop. The federal government business is to promote commerce, interstate commerce. Let's allow us to buy insurance across state lines. Someone in Texas should be able to buy insurance from a company in Massachusetts if they want to. We could also allow smaller business and individuals to join trade associations and thereby compete with the larger companies as far as bringing down the cost of insurance. These are things we can do. Again, the bottom line we have is most people don't pay for their own insurance. They don't care what it costs. Allow you to put in a medical savings account. You start paying for it yourself, and you have some skin in the game. You understand what it's going to cost, and you'll learn how to reduce those costs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wall. And for his response on this question, we turn to John Gay.
We've got to have tort reform. We've got to have portability of insurance. When I moved my dad to Texas from Tennessee, we had to change insurance companies because he had Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee instead of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. We need to have tort reform. Doctors and hospitals should not be forced to order an unnecessary test just to protect themselves from lawsuits. Who thought it was? I appreciate that Dr. Paul is not a lawyer, and I'm so pleased to see so many people coming up in the Tea Parties and 912 groups that are not lawyers. Because who thought it was a good idea to send lawyers to Washington to make laws that the rest of us had to live under? You notice they don't make a lot of laws about lawyers. They don't do much to regulate themselves. And they don't understand the difference between legal to man and lawful to God. There are things that are legal unto man that are not lawful unto God, and we got to get that straight. In about 1934, Harvard Law School hired a professor to run their law school that started teaching the doctrine of man, the law of man rather than the law of God. If we'll get back to our roots in this country and know that we have a higher authority, we'll start making some better decisions. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gay.